Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the County Council work session meeting for January 15th, 2013. It's 9 a.m. and the session is open.
Members of the council, I'd like to move to amend the agenda for this morning. We now have our fifth council member, and I'd like to vote on a president of the board.
There's a motion on the floor to amend the agenda to vote for the president, vice president, or just president?
Both.
For the president and vice president of the board. Do I have a second?
I second it.
I have a second from Councilman McCarthy. The floor is open for discussion.
I would recommend that we wait after at least a week, just 1 week. We had discussions right after we were elected for a few weeks, I believe, to consider who we would choose as president and vice president. This seems as hasty as the timeline as everything else that's being put forth in the county executive's office.
Okay. I'm in favor of moving forward with the election of president and vice president. We, the council members, all know each other. We've been floundering for the last several weeks. It's time that we start taking care of business, and the sooner that we have a president, the better, and I see no reason, legitimate reason, for us to delay.
Well, I think there is a legitimate reason. As far as I'm concerned, this is still an outstanding question as to vacancy, and I believe there was an injunction filed in court yesterday on this matter. So I personally would like to see how that plays out before we proceed, but that's my own opinion.
I think that's a very good point, that we need to see how that does play out, and it's I think there's some valid, I would say that one is a reason to wait.
As best as I can determine, I've not been notified of any injunction. Number two, I concur with Mr. Hodge. We have spent over 6 weeks here having done nothing. Nothing else, just for the purpose of decorum. If we had a president, we could have a much more orderly meeting and hopefully move forward.
Well, that brings up a good question as to, I was wondering if this hasty appointment had something to do with the suit that was filed. And it's interesting that the vacancy is actually going to have a bearing on that special council vote that is going to provide protection to the county executive for that decision she had made to switch her party affiliation. And it should outrage every taxpayer in this county that their tax dollars are being used to protect her decision to switch her party affiliation. And I think that if she knew, she must know it's very challengeable to have to coordinate such moves to protect herself.
If I might make a comment, the very first meeting we had, I believe, was December 4th, please correct me if I'm wrong. Mr. Hodge basically asked that the council, which is us four right here, minus Ms. Bowlesby, basically make the effort to decide criteria and select a council person. We did not do that, and we basically allowed our opportunity to replace the fifth person, passed and went to Terry Moore, which is as the charter states.
Councilman McCarthy, you have very selective memory. Do you not remember the attempt by two of the council to go over the names put forth by the Republican Central Committee, which I believe is the correct process? You could have said,
Excuse me.
no,
Point of order. Point of order. Point of order. We are discussing.
Directly attributable to the discussion we're having.
There's a
Well, yes,
motion.
you're absolutely right. You brought up 2 minutes before
Like
adjournment.
what you're hearing, and
Council.
I'm sick of it.
Council.
The discussion should be on the motion to appoint a president and vice president.
That is the motion on the floor.
Not the legality of the appointment or not. So is there any other discussion on the motion to appoint a president and vice President.
Okay,
Or
to get
to
back,
amend the agenda.
okay, to get back to that discussion point about appointing a president or vice president, I don't think it's appropriate at this time. And if you have any questions about the suit being filed, Administrator Wine or Attorney Allison, would you like to verify? Have you received any documents?
No.
You have not. Nothing was faxed to you.
No, I didn't see anything.
Would you like to check?
No.
Okay. Would you like to wait a week?
No, I'd
Until you can check?
like to call for the vote.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second on the floor to amend the agenda to appoint a president and vice president of the board. There's been a call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 3-2.
I move that we select Robert Hodge to be president of the council.
There's a motion on the floor to select Robert Hodge, Councilman Robert Hodge, as president of the council. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I have a first and a second on the floor, and it's open to discussion.
Well, I hate to interrupt this farce that's played out here this morning. I had a feeling this motion would come up today, and I have to say, for some time, I've heard that Councilman Hodge has been engaged in some illegal activity, stealing electric from his tenants, and recently some information came to my attention that substantiated these claims. And this was concerning a property at 2963 West Gillespie Highway, former tenant of yours. I'm sure you're aware of this situation. And basically, she contacted the county and made her claims known that you had been stealing electric from some of your tenants, as per your property manager, John Nito, as his name is written here. And not only from your tenants, but also from her. In fact, her meter was ran up to almost a $2,000 bill. Now, she had made multiple attempts to shut off these illegal breakers, and you continued to turn them back on. And as this played out, as she details here in her letter, which I'll gladly give you a copy, although I'm sure you're familiar with this, she failed to accept the settlement offer of $600 to keep quiet about this, and eventually you ended up evicting her. Now, I'm sure you'll make the case that this was, really the ramblings of a disgruntled former tenant that seems to be her MO, but as luck would have it, the county inspectors went out there to look at the property, and lo and behold, they found not only multiple violations and safety hazards on the house, but also, if I'm quoting here, the service pedestal feeding the dwelling was also the same one that has served Seema shop. And according to electrical inspection records, no permits were filed for a shop at this address. In other words, the claims you were making were true, as backed up by the county inspectors. Now, this file coincidentally trails off after this incident, but I did want to read into the record her closing remarks here, which I think are quite poignant here this morning.
Would you mention the date of that, please?
It was back in June of 2008.
I think it's
Quiet.
significant.
Okay.
Quiet, please, in the
Can I say
audience.
something?
Let me finish. Let me read this. Okay, apparently illegality apparently has to do with what took place, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is still going on today, as a matter of fact. So, anyway, as she states here in the letter, I found that Mr. Hodge, in my opinion, is not a trustworthy person. I need help, and I don't know who to go to, but I think that I need to let the people know what type of person he is, and to not let someone like this have any more control over the community. And I think that's very apropos for what's going on here this morning. And I'm voting no on the motion, and rather than appoint you president of this board personally, I'd like to ask you to resign. I think this is disgusting and disturbing behavior, and this is probably the one incident that I'm aware of. So.
Well, I wanted to bring up, also, when we were, the first year, or first month after we were elected, Commissioner Hodge had come to us with a criteria for how we should choose our president and vice president. And I believe in that listing there was something to do with experience, integrity, things like that. And in my experience, well, even prior, but even after the serving in office, there's been a number of things that I have not been pleased about with his representation of his seat. It seems that it's consistently for his benefit that he's looking out for. I'm thinking about the Elk Neck Bridge, the rezonings of his properties, during the comprehensive rezoning process, just to name a few. And for those reasons, I cannot vote for Councilman Hodge to be president of this board.
Councilman Dunn, just to your issue, this is something that happened a long time ago. I have hundreds of tenants, residential, industrial, commercial tenants, hundreds. I've had thousands over my career. Yes, I did have a tenant from hell, and she was it. If you're in the landlord business, you're going to run across a tenant from hell. If in fact her accusations were accurate and true, she could have filed a criminal complaint, she could have filed a civil complaint, she could have done a lot of things if they were actually true and accurate. None of that happened. It is true that eventually she was evicted for non-payment of rent, and certainly I have a lot of good tenants. I could bring in here that pack this room with tenants that are very happy about the management of their rental properties, and I don't believe that this issue should be tried in public opinion and in politics. It's very unfortunate that you bring that up. As a matter of Council Brumel, I've repeatedly over the last 2 years indicated to you that if you felt that there was any improprieties, any issues that you felt that I was involved in, that you should file an ethics complaint and have the matter thoroughly investigated, evaluated, researched, and decided upon. So
I think that was good advice.
And that matter.
And we know that if a complaint is filed, it has to remain confidential.
True. So the fact is that if you have issues with any of my ethics, that you should file a complaint, or you should ask for an advisory opinion and get thorough analysis and investigation so that you can get all the facts. Of course, on the other hand, you could always come to me anytime, ever, and sit down with me and discuss your concerns, and I'll be happy to fill you in on the background and the issue directly, and now and in the future about any issue that you have.
Well, Councilman Hodge, I had done that even before you were elected as a commissioner, when you were chairman of the Republican Central Committee, the issue with Tom McWilliams. When our chief goal was to recruit and support candidates. What you did to Tom McWilliams was just unspeakable, unethical. The last thing a chairman should do to a candidate. And I did tell you about that. I shared with you my concerns. And as you know, there was a number of other issues during that period of time. So I have come to you, so please don't get the impression that I have not tried to talk this out.
Anyone else have any discussion on the matter?
So let me get this, you're claiming that these charges are not true. How do you explain the letter from the county inspectors? Are they also lying here? How was this ultimately resolved, if it was, out of curiosity?
This is not the appropriate venue to go into.
Okay.
If you, landlord-tenant court is where this was resolved, and it was resolved, and that's the last I'm going to speak of it. Is there any other comments?
There's a motion and second on the floor to appoint Councilman Robert Hodge as president of the county council. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Hell no.
Motion carries 3-2.
I'd like to make a brief comment. That is true that I do have a criteria sheet that.
You had it right the first time.
That list the parameters that I believe a good leader should have. And I will abide by those. I'll pass them out again. But when and if any councilman believes that I haven't abided by any of that criteria, that I've asked for all of us to abide by, then I'd like to talk about it and I don't want to talk about things that happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I want to talk about today. And I want to move this county forward. I want us to work together. It's pretty obvious that you're not happy about this selection, but I hope that you would give me the benefit of the doubt, starting now and into the future, on how we can move forward and get things done for the benefit of the citizens, and put our petty bickering, personal feelings aside, and think about what's best for the people sitting in this room and everyone else that lives in this county.
See, Commissioner or Councilman Hodge, that's the problem. What you see as the best for the county is totally different than what Councilman Dunn and I believe are the best. And if you look at what we have supported and what we've accomplished in our 2 years.
Nothing.
Well, someone had said nothing out there.
Why for peanut gallery?
Yes. And I
I
wish
signaled them to calm down.
at some point alreasin would turn that camera around and just scope.
I don't take orders from you, thank you.
Excuse me, please, order on the council,
Okay.
please.
So, and,
Order, thank you.
Council, I'd like to make a motion to, I'm nominating for election Alan McCarthy as the Vice President of the Council.
There's a motion on the floor to nominate Alan McCarthy as Vice President of the Council. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second from Joyce Bowlesby. Is there further discussion? Is there any discussion?
yeah, there's some discussion. I'd like to hear your reasons for seconding, that motion, Ms. Bolsby.
I feel that Al is totally qualified to accept the position of Vice President. I am concerned about the decorum at these meetings. I am concerned about the sniggering and the smiling that goes on from some members of this board. I believe that between Alan and Robert, we will have true decorum, and we will lead this county forward. We've got to learn to work together, Diana. We've got to learn to work together.
Working together, in your opinion, is meaning, condoning the actions of what you three have been responsible for, and I'll never.
I have done nothing.
Ms. Bowlesby, how you misrepresented the charter board is a crime. It's a crime. And if you go to my
Point of order,
website,
we're not talking about
There is
Joyce
a
Bowlesby. We're
history
talking about
Council,
Alan McCarthy.
there's a motion on the floor.
Buddies for life.
Motion for floor, there's a motion on the floor for Vice President. A motion and a second is on the floor.
This is discussion.
yes, it is.
What can I say? What I've seen from Councilman, what I've seen from Councilman McCarthy here over the last month, the Vice President needs to be in a position to take over if the President cannot conduct the meetings. And my goodness, you know, Alan can't keep up with the agenda, and Hodge has to coach him along here. And I don't see where he is at all suited for this position, so.
Well, I believe that Mr. McCarthy is a very bright man. He's been very successful in his career, and I think that he can use his skill sets that he's acquired over the years to bring that forward for the county. And even though he may not know every issue that faces Cecil County today, I think he's come a long way in a short period of time. And I believe, and I feel strongly, that Alan McCarthy can help and pitch in, and certainly I don't believe I'm going to go anywhere in the near future. So I know that we can work together, and I would hope that we can work together well too. Mr. Dunn and Ms. Brumel, I would hope that we could work together. And when we have discussion on an issue facing Cecil County, I hope that you discuss clearly the merits that you see them for any issue, so that we can all listen to what you have to offer on it, and we will listen. I hope that we will all listen to what you have to offer This is not a foregone conclusion as far as I'm concerned on any issue in Cecil County. So I believe that Alan holds no grudge or baggage and will do a great job as vice president.
Mr. Hodge, as well and as eloquently as you said that, you know, what you do and what you say are two different things. And, you know, that, I'm really sad for Cecil County. I have to say that. The 25 years I've invested, you can see I didn't have any personal interest, personal stake. I've only tried to move the county forward for what was best for the citizens. And all along the way, I've seen those, most of them are sitting out in this audience right now, that are in it for personal reasons, personal gain. And it's on behalf of the taxpayers. That's what, it's just a shame.
I'd like to call the vote.
I bet you would.
There's a motion on the floor to elect Councilman McCarthy as the Vice President of the County Council. It was seconded by Joyce Goldsby. There's been a call for the vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed?
No.
No.
The vote is 3-2. And with that, President Hodge, I turn the agenda over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the first item on our agenda for this work session is to approve the meeting minutes from January 8th of 2013. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for January 8th?
So moved.
Seconded.
There's been a motion for a first and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I have a question, a request to change on the second page, which was not in my book, by the way. Council members agreed to consider the appointments at their evening legislative meeting scheduled for January 15th. I know that it was put on for that meeting, but I don't know how many times I've said this. It's introduced at a meeting, evening meeting, and then voted at the next evening meeting. Was this an emergency? Did we agree that this was an emergency? I didn't think so.
I think what happened.
And I see that it's on the agenda as well, on the evening meeting. And I'm gonna propose this evening again that no, this be moved to the next legislative evening meeting. And I have a feeling I'm gonna be outvoted because you're gonna need this vote to hire the special counsel. So if anything, I just need agreed to consider to be removed. Council members Brumel and Dunn, in fact, requested a disclosure statement with the resumes for the appointments, proposed appointments for consideration. I would like that included in the top paragraph on page 2.
Okay, I guess I'll accept that amendment to my motion.
And then I have another one on page 3.
Let's back up.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Would you?
We don't have page 2.
I don't have page 2.
I apologize, that was just a copy of error. We'll get copies.
While we're waiting for page 2, can we, let's move on to the closed session meeting minutes of January 8th. Is there a motion to approve the closed session meeting minutes?
So moved.
I'll second it.
You got page 2.
Is there any discussion on the closed session meeting minutes for January 8th? Okay, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes for the closed session of January 8th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved unanimously. All right, Vicki, why don't we move on?
I would just propose that we wait until next week to approve those.
Okay, is there a motion to wait for a week to approve the meeting minutes of the council legislative meeting for January 8th?
Yes.
would you, Mr. Councilman Dunn, would you withdraw your motion then?
Sure, I withdraw the previous motion.
Okay, is there a second to the motion to postpone the decision on the meeting minutes for January 8th?
Sure, I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion to postpone the approval of the January 8th council legislative meeting minutes?
Is there any reason why we could not approve those at this evening's meeting? I mean, it's only one page to read.
No, there's a second page that I have changes on, and I'd like to get.
Well, I know, when I said a second page, it is one page, the second page is one page. And here it is right now. Maybe we would adjourn for 5 minutes and read it.
We don't usually, accept work session minutes in the evening meeting.
There's been a motion and a second to postpone the decision on approving the meeting minutes. All in favor of postponing it, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say no. Okay. The motion carries 3-1. There's one abstention. Okay, item number 2 on the agenda is a review of the fiscal year 2014 budget hearing and presentation schedule. Vicki, do you have that schedule?
I provided in your packets a draft as per your discussion at the last meeting regarding the operating and CIP budget schedule. There is one change on page 2 to that. On page 1, at the 1 p.m. under the state's attorneys, that there is no park unit anymore. I had left that on there in error, so that has been removed at the sheriff's office on April 16th, that meeting. So
we're going to delete the
yeah, there's no park unit any longer. And we had put in a request with the county executive's office, as you had discussed, for a preliminary budget meeting in February, and we have not received any notification of that yet. So I guess I'm just looking at this point for you to review if this is the timeline, excuse me, for your budget work sessions, so that has to be advertised for the public.
Okay.
So there's been no response to our request to move these meetings into February, so that the public could even have some input before Councilman Moore, or County Executive Moore, submits her budget. No response means she's not gonna change the timeline. This is the way she wants to do it, kind of reminiscent of the administrative tier map that she's submitted.
Mr. President, could I interject? We have had discussions with the executive about having some forum before the council relating to the capital and operating budgets. She asked us yesterday to talk to some other jurisdictions so she can get a better idea of how she may want to present that. So we're still awaiting, we're just trying to nail that down, and we'll get back with you as soon as we have know what the format will be, and we'll give you some dates.
Okay, so should we need to wait on this, or you can't move forward in the advertising? When is the last date that you have, that we can submit this for you to advertise? Within the required amount of time?
It should be 2 weeks.
We have 2
These are
weeks.
public hearings, yes, they have to be advertised 2 weeks in advance of the public hearing.
You wanna wait 2 weeks before we decide to accept this?
This is not a legislative issue, and we don't have to vote on this, but I do believe that you and I have both expressed some concern about the proposed budget process that's been presented, and we've asked for some amendment to it. And I don't have a problem giving the executive additional time to consider our request. And so, Mr. Wine has indicated that they'd like to have a little bit more time, and I'm certainly willing to do that, and hopefully by next Tuesday work session or next week, they will have something that they can report to us.
Okay, so we don't have to vote on
No.
accepting this
No.
timeline?
No, not in my mind. Now, I would suggest to you that these department presentations would be made jointly to the council. That they need to sell their budget that the executive has provided to us. And so we should be available for each of these presentations offered to us, and be willing to ask questions, and the public should be invited also, so that the public can hear what is in the budget and why. So we have the opportunity to ask questions and be well informed on what the executive budget is all about before we vote on it. But no,
I noticed that December 26th is when the operating budget form sent to county departments and agencies, and then February 1st was the due date for returning the budget request to budget manager and finance department. I wonder if there's a process that we could go through in seeing their requests, and if there's, I'm sure there's a format to show why they're justifying that. Do you think that would be work product of the county executive, or?
I think it is the perusal of the county executive to ask for budget requests and tweak them and modify them and adjust them and make a preliminary budget for our consideration. So I don't think it's in our job description to put the budget together. That's the executive's job.
I think it is in our job description to accept the budget and make any line item changes.
That's true.
Well,
That's true.
What I've been requesting from the beginning is information. We need to have information to base our decisions on.
That's
And for her to even amend, you know, the requests and justifying, you know, what changes she's made and why, I think there would be a work product that would be easily disseminated to the public and for us to review it.
There is. It's all laid out here in the schedule. And in my mind, the departments have been asked to provide a budget, and that's to be provided to the executive or the budget manager by February 1st. The executive and her office with the budget manager and the director of finance and others has until March 1st to work that budget and provide it to us for our consideration. And then we have every opportunity from March 5th through, help me out, Al. April 16th to ask questions and talk about it and discuss it and decide whether it meets our needs or not.
You understand where I'm coming from, just wanting the information from the departments. That might
That's
even
what
save some meetings. We can call them if we have any questions, just looking directly at their requests. And I'm wondering also the budget advisory, remember the citizens budget advisory committee? How are we planning on incorporating them into the process?
I don't think we've talked about it, but I think that might be a good idea, and there's two issues there. We could have them, if we choose to put that committee together, they could sit in on these hearings or meetings and listen to the presentations and provide some advice if you'd like them to. And when I say them, it would probably be a different committee, similar name, different committee.
Well, you wouldn't object to a request to county executive department to ask for those request forms and with her changes?
Are you asking if the council wants
Yeah.
to ask
To
for
formally ask,
the budgets of of the departments.
And then with any changes.
Proposed budgets.
Mhm. And with any changes that she might have, she
The
would
problem-
document them.
The problem is that we have entered into a new era on December 3rd. We have entered into charter government. We, the council, are no longer required or authorized to prepare a budget. Okay, that's not our job anymore. That's the job of the executive. And we should let her do her job. And we should do our part to study that budget and make sure that she's done a good job of preparing it. So I don't know that we should
I think
be,
you've misunderstood me. I keep saying I just need the information. I need the information to base my decision on, and I think that's a very comprehensive way of going about getting the information. Why would you be against requesting?
Councilman Bruno, why do you need the information?
Why do I need, so I can make a fair decision?
About what?
Any of the department's requests, that they're asking for, and then seeing the final, budget that the county executive brings forth. I need to have it based on where's the information coming from.
It's the responsibility of the county executive to prepare the budget and to defend the budget,
What is the responsibility of the council?
to approve it.
To approve it, then we can.
How do we approve it? Do we just look at it and say, that looks good? We're not basing it on information, we just, what are you basing your decision on?
I'm not basing my decision on anything, because I am not making a decision right now, but I just was asking the question. I just don't think that, first of all, the timeline for this budget is certainly been, it's much tighter. It's accelerated. So I'm sure that the county executive and the department heads are struggling with that. I think we need to give them the opportunity to prepare something and then have us look at it, review it, and if we have questions, then go back to them with those questions. I think we're putting the cart before the horse, and we're creating a lot of work.
No, this is work product that's already been identified, and I think you basically justified everything I was saying.
I don't think so.
I think that the meetings that were scheduled from March 12th through April 16th with
Same time.
with the budget, they will be presenting the department's budgets, and we will have all the opportunity in the world to ask all the questions and ask explanations and justifications on why. And if certain of those directors feel that their budget has been stripped or reduced or too much money, they can certainly speak up at that time. But I believe every council member will have the ability to, from March 12th, March 19th, March 26th, April 2nd, April 9th, and April 16th to ask and investigate all we want in the budget. And I think that's sufficient. Now, in the past, and I guess we'll ask, that we can ask for the budget, because in the past it had the proposed requested budget as a line item on the requested budget and the proposed budget. So that is something that we could ask for if we chose to see the difference in the discrepancy between what the departments asked for and what the executive is proposing, if you wanted to do that. But I don't want us to get into the micromanaging of the budget that is clearly spelled out in the charter. So if you want to do some individual investigation and you have specific questions, I am sure, just like the public, that the Director of Finance and others within the executive branch would be happy to answer any questions that you have about the budget individually. I know that over the last several years, we've opened it up to anybody that has questions on how that budget is put together, what's in the budget. I think it's been a very open process, and we want to continue that. But it's not our job to develop that budget.
It just seems to be apparent to me that your decisions continue to insulate the office of the county executive and the checks and balances that we're supposed to provide.
Is there any other comments on the schedule, of the proposed schedule? Does anyone have any proposed changes or adjustments to the schedule? Okay, let's move on to item number 3 on our agenda. And this is an item that I asked to place on the agenda. I have heard about and actually went to a seminar by the Professional Registered Parliamentarians. The president of the parliamentarian organization, his name is Michael Swift. I talked to him briefly about how we could know more about Robert's Rules of Orders. And he offered to come here to Cecil County and give the council some training for the cost of tolls and travel expenses. He could come here for an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 or how much time that you would like to spend on learning the basics of Robert's Rules of Order. And so I think it would be a good investment of a couple $100 for him to do some on-site training to educate us better on how to manage our meetings and be more productive and create a more congenial work environment here. So I'm asking for the support of spending a couple $100 maximum to have a little work session, training session that can even be open to the public to learn more about Robert's Rules of Order. I'm asking for some support for that.
I would move that we adopt Mr. Hodges' comments.
I'll second it for discussion.
I don't think this is what's the problem with our meetings, and if we had a dispute over what Robert's Rules says, how are we going to mediate that? And I think that's why it's important that we have our own attorney that is also trained in parliamentary rules.
Is the amount of money being spent the point of question?
No, I make my point that this isn't going to be the remedy in making our meetings run smoothly. I think we need someone that is, apart from the council, providing the direction, the parliamentary Robert's Rules guidelines, that were, that he would be well versed in that and be able to cite and support his decisions.
I agree with you that our legal counsel should be well versed in Robert's Rules of Order, but I also believe that we individually should have some background and some knowledge about it ourselves so that we don't have to ask our legal counsel every twist and turn on an issue, that we should be able to have some knowledge and training and experience of our own. So
I'm actually getting some on-the-job training with this. We've gotten advice from an attorney, which Councilman Hodge, you admitted, was wrong when 2 of the council walked out. You admitted that that did not end the meeting. So I have had many years of meetings with Robert's Rules, learned how to file charges against somebody and successfully did so. It's, I think every one of us can pick up a book and read Robert's Rules, and it has to be an edition that we agree to, because there are different editions.
is there any other discussion?
Yeah. Can I make it? I move that we bring Mr. Swift to Cecil County at the terms that he presented to basically advise the council and basically teach the council what he can about Robert's Rules of Order.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion, but I'd like some discussion, additional discussion.
Go ahead.
I welcome the opportunity to broaden my knowledge about any subject. I don't care what it is, and I think that this man appears to be an expert. The decorum of these meetings is deplorable. Sitting in the public, it's just deplorable. I would like us to get better, and if this is going to help us get better, if this is going to teach us how to listen, how to cooperate, and how to agree to disagree, then I'm for it.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, Councilwoman Bowlesby, I know you don't believe that that's what the problem is. I think you're very well aware. And to justify it by using taxpayer money
I don't know what the problem is, Councilman Bruno, would you like to expand on it? I don't know.
Okay. There's been a motion to bring Michael Swift from the Professional Register of Parliamentarians to Cecil County for an on-site training of Robert's Rules of Order, based on the letter that he sent to the Cecil County Council. There's been a motion and a second.
Can I ask a question real quick? It says hourly rate, he's not gonna charge us?
He is not gonna charge us an hourly rate. He indicated to me that he would only charge for his transportation cost, his tolls and fuel for getting.
Transportation mileage he has, is that the
Okay.
cost? Can we at least get an agreement of how much he's gonna charge?
Can we say not to exceed $250
Wow, that's, from Baltimore?
for Baltimore?
He has right here, transportation mileage, 51 cents per mile, and let me read this one sentence. I will waive my rates and present the session to Cecil County Council for traveling expenses and the cost of a book, which is $5. I mean, if the money is the big issue, I will gladly fund it myself.
Well, how many miles is it to a round trip to Baltimore?
54 to downtown Baltimore.
54, 100, so
It's $26 each way.
$6 toll getting to Cecil County.
that's pretty high then, 250.
I told you that I would gladly fund it out of my own pockets if the money is the issue. I would bet you
Yes, please fund it out of your own pocket.
that I will. I call for the vote.
Okay, then the motion, we're gonna leave off the expenses that, it'll be paid from private funds. All right, we've had a motion and discussion on bringing Mr. Michael Swift to Cecil County to have an on-site training, paid for by private sources. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say aye.
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 Okay, the motion carries 3-2. Item number 4 is the County Council Legislative Meeting Agenda Review. You all have a packet in front of you for tonight's meeting. We have a citizens quarter that starts at 6 o'clock. I would encourage all council members to participate.
Can I ask a question about the Citizens Corner? Have we extended an invitation to County Executive Moore? I've had requests from the public that there's a number of questions they have for her. And there's no opportunity really for them to ask her in public.
Okay. I would support sending them, asking Al Wine will be there. Is that good enough?
Mr. President, yeah, the executive has asked me to attend those meetings for her.
For her. So County Executive Moore doesn't want to be available to the public to answer questions directly?
I don't think we can make statements like that because we don't know why she's doing it, Councilman Bruno. And that's the kind of thing that gets this council in trouble.
I would encourage the citizens that want Ms. Moore to come to the Citizens Council or communicate in any way, shape, or form, communicate with Executive Moore directly and not through you or me or the council. So at the end of the day, if the citizens have an issue with Executive Moore, they should address it with Executive Moore.
Well, if they're asking for her to come to the
Then
Citizens
they
Corner,
should ask
please copy me on so that I can show that the requests are out there.
I would encourage your constituents to ask to communicate directly with the executive. In the meantime, Director of Administration Al Wine will be here, and hopefully he'll have the answers or get them for the constituents that would like to come to our Citizens Corner meeting. So I would encourage the citizens to come. I would encourage the council members to participate. Okay, we have in front of us meeting minutes for December 18th, County Council Legislative Meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
No, and that's for tonight.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Is there any questions about the meeting minutes? Is there any amendments to the agenda? Is it before?
Yes. Who on page 4, back up. Did we have a statement on our previous minutes that the full recording of the minutes are on the website? And I have a question, relative to, wondering, is the complete recording the actual minute record?
You asking a general question or something specific on the agenda?
General question.
And repeat the question.
The official record of the minutes, is it the recording? Or is it the minutes that we're approving here?
I think it's the minutes that we're approving here.
Not the recording? Is not, if these minutes reflect something that is contradictory to the actual recording, they cannot be used in a court of law?
I think legal counsel have to answer that, but my opinion, they could both be used in the court of law.
Huh?
But I think.
Mr. Allison?
I think if the minutes you vote and approve of the official minutes, I think that the recording can also be submitted as evidence.
Okay. I was just wanting to, now you said you think, is there a way for me to verify? Because these minutes are very, very general, and there's a number of things that we've been leaving out, and I thought, well, that's okay because we have the recordings.
I'd certainly be willing to look into it further if you want to, if the council wants an answer to the question.
Yes.
To send it to me as a question from the council. Through Ms. Rinkerman's office, and I'll be happy to look into it before back.
Is that okay with the board that I send that question to Attorney Allison?
I'm okay with that.
Yes? Okay. And then I thought we had before had a statement on the minutes saying that full recording is on the website with ccgov.org referencing. I think we might want to look into that, because when people are reading the minutes, they need to know where to go to find the full recording. Just a statement. Let's see here. On page 4, there,
Send it back to your book.
okay, are you ready? Mr. McCarthy?
Take your time, take your time now.
All right, on page 4, fourth from the bottom, or third from the bottom, Council Wilson advised the council, it states that if 2 council members leave the meeting, there is no quorum to conduct business. I believe what it said, Council Wilson advised the council to have 2 members leave the meeting. And he did not say that there won't be a quorum. So my proposed change is Council Wilson advised the council to have 2 members leave the meeting.
Commissioner Vermont was at that meeting, he did say that. You can check the audio.
I will, so I'll make a motion that we wait to accept this, because I remember him making the comment that he was probably wrong again.
He said, I'm just a non-paid attorney, and shouldn't have an opinion, but I would suggest that 2 commissioners leave the meeting and then there won't be a quorum.
No, I don't think he's.
Time out. It's important to listen to the recording between now and tonight.
Thank you, yes.
We will not consider these meeting minutes until tonight at 7 o'clock.
Okay. Should we have a motion for that?
No, this is our evening meeting agenda that we're reviewing.
Oh, that's true, okay.
Okay, so we're not voting on it now, but we will accept modifications and amendments up until this evening. Okay, on our agenda tonight is a presentation to the council from Nick Zazzuti on the Cecil County Foster Care Program and a presentation from Bill Kilby from Cecil Land Trust. We'll have our council comments, public comment, then we'll present 2 certificates of recognition from Peter Bainey and Bill Funk. Under old business, we're going to consider the appointments from the county executive of Al C. Wine, Director of Administration, Winston Robinson, Director of Finance, and Jason Allison as the county attorney. Then we have consideration of special legal counsel, request for authorization to retain special legal counsel. And I noticed that Jenny Barnhart is here and Jason Allison is here. If there's any questions on this matter, if anyone wanted to ask Ms. Barnhart any questions, she's here available for you today.
Well, my question is to Attorney Allison. What is the special legal counsel, what is the area of expertise that Ms. Barnhart will provide? You had referenced anticipating an injunction.
I sent a cover letter over with the proposed engagement that, without having it in front of me, outlined that Ms. Barnhart and her firm would represent as special counsel in the matter of appointments, including but not limited, if necessary, providing legal representation if there is a lawsuit filed related to appointments. I'd ask that you refer back to the letter that I had submitted to this council last week, which I think outlines the proposed appointment.
And the appointments, I'm anticipating weren't necessarily for directors, but for the appointment to the council. And once again, I said that this morning, I don't think it's right for the taxpayers to fund Ms. Moore's decision to become unaffiliated. So I'll be voting against that. And I noticed too that her rates are pretty steep. I mean, coming from the law firm was $300 an hour.
Again, I don't have the letter in front of me. I think the rates are market for her area.
Wow, that's a lot higher than, oh, I'm sorry, $350 per hour. Okay.
And if you look, I believe there's a range. That's for senior counsel. I believe there is a range of rates for associates, paralegals, and et cetera.
Do we know what rates we're going to be using?
Well, it depends on who's working on the matter in particular.
It's clearly delineated in her acceptance letter.
It is.
Clearly delineated that there are 4 different rates, and we don't know which. I haven't. I'm anticipating. I've read Ms. Barnhart's resume, and she's a pretty high-powered attorney, exceptional credentials. So I anticipate $350 an hour.
I think it depends. First off, hopefully we won't spend a dime on this issue. Hopefully there won't be a lawsuit or a challenge, and we won't have any cost to the county. Secondly, anybody to be blamed for costing the county will be those that bring this challenge. Thirdly, I don't
How do you
think,
that?
Ms. Barnhart is not going to do the whole case. If there's a case, she will not do it all by herself. She will delegate other parts of this function to others, and those others will be charging less than she would. She will only charge her rate for the time that she spends
Once
on
again, you're doing this, you're saying, you're being very consistent. If anyone disagrees with you, then they're the ones that's the problem. No one's allowed to exercise their free right.
That's not what I said.
They're the ones costing the county if they exercise their free right to challenge this.
And I'd like you to, if they challenge, will they agree to pay if they lose? Will you find that out for me? Since you apparently know what's going on.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's a
let's
lot
move.
of
Is there any
people out
other
there that are
questions?
upset.
Is there any other questions regarding this matter before we vote on it tonight? Is there any other questions of Mrs. Barnhart or any of the appointments?
Council President Hodge, I'd like to just note that I have circulated Cameron Brown's resume for the council also. And I apologize that it came a little late. I was not in the office yesterday. I've been ill, and I got it late today, and I was able to pull it off and get it out to you.
Right, for the record, you passed that out to us this morning. Does everyone have Cameron Brown's resume?
And I'd also like to note that both Mr. Brown and Ms. Barnhart are amenable to filing the financial disclosures required. Although it would appear that under the charter, those aren't required to be filed or under the code until they have 30 days after appointment to file.
Mr. Allison, I don't know how many times we have to have this discussion. Yes, they can file it 30 days after, but wouldn't it be more insightful for the council to have it at the time that we're reviewing?
That's a council decision. That's not a legal matter for me.
May I ask a question, please? Have you seem to have insinuated that we should expect to be sued or someone here sued over one particular issue, and if so, and you know, would you please give us your idea of what is to happen here very shortly?
I've just been told that there was a suit filed yesterday.
Well, who told you? That's the question is what do you know that we do not know, and what are we to anticipate?
Well, at this point, it's from what I've been hearing from our county executive's office, they've received nothing. So I'd rather hold off in checking myself to see if it's actually been filed.
You said no more than half an hour ago
Okay.
that you asked these gentlemen to see if something had been received. Has anything been received?
Councilperson McCarthy, my office says nothing was received. I have not been there, but I will tell you that I have been able to check, and suit was in fact filed yesterday by Delegate Smeagol's office on behalf representing Chris Yaskis.
And what grounds would they be, please?
I haven't been able to review the suit yet, so I'm not sure.
All right, is there any other questions about appointments for tonight? All right, let's move on. New business, introduction of resolutions. There's a resolution amending the Cecil County Master Water and Sewer Plan. Eric, I guess you're going to tell us about this, please?
That's correct, Mr. President. The item on your agenda this evening concerns Conoco Mobile Home Park. They have had issue with Maryland Department of the Environment concerning their on-site septic disposal system for the mobile homes within the park. The state, through the Maryland Department of the Environment, has required the ownership of the park to install a centralized wastewater treatment facility and retire the group septic system that's presently on site. The engineer for the park has had meetings with MDE, and MDE has requested that Table 8 of the Master Water and Sewer Plan be amended to reflect the fact that the park is moving to a sequential batch reactor with ultraviolet disinfection rather than the group septic system that was previously used to treat the wastewater effluent from the mobile homes within the park. So this was at the December Planning Commission meeting. Both staff and Planning Commission have recommended that the document be amended to change Table 8 to reflect the fact that there will be a centralized wastewater treatment plant on site for the park.
So it's going from a lagoon to a package plant?
They have a septic system there now, and the effluent that has been discharged from that septic system was not meeting the permits that the MDE had issued to the park. And so over the last several, I'll say several years, they have been in discussion as to what is the most appropriate means to correct the violations, and ultimately it was decided upon that this centralized plant would be the most optimal choice to come back into compliance.
Does this compromise the master water sewer plan in that area, that other changes could be made at a later date?
No.
I made a mistake. It's not Eric, it's the Director of Planning and Zoning, Mr. Stenstrom. Okay, any other questions on the amendment to the County Master Water Sewer Plan by any of the council members at this time? We'll have an opportunity tonight if you have other questions, or I'm sure that Mr. Stenstrom could answer your questions between now and tonight. We also have a resolution, cable service franchise agreements. I assume that Special Counsel Chip McLeod will be here tonight.
That's correct.
But today, for now, if there's any questions, Director of Administration, Al Wine is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Now, I haven't had time to read the whole thing yet, but as soon as I saw this item on the agenda, I said, is broadband included in the contract? And it's not, I don't think.
Not so, yeah, there's a legal prohibition because the Cable Act doesn't really address broadband, but there are some pieces in the agreements, for instance, Atlantic Broadband as well as Armstrong are providing internet service to many of our public facilities. Comcast just provides basic cable. So there is, in two of the franchise agreements, there is language within the Armstrong and Atlantic Broadband franchise agreements that where they basically agreed to work with the county in the extension of the last mile internet service. Comcast did not insert that language because of internal legal questions that they had about inserting that language. But overall, but they are participating in the Maryland Broadband Co-op. Comcast is for last mile type initiatives. So we did address it somewhat, although we were somewhat limited by other legal provisions. You know, we couldn't do a whole lot there. But just to give, for Councilwoman Bowlesby and Councilman McCarthy's benefit, the other three council members have been involved with this for the last couple of years. This goes back to a couple of years ago in 2011, our 3 franchise agreements were coming up for expiration, I think in July of 2011. At that time, the commissioners thought it would be prudent to revamp our ordinance, the cable television ordinance, which dates back to the early 80s. So it was somewhat outdated. It wasn't in sync with the 1992 Cable Act and some other legislation. So we thought that would be the foundation. We got that enacted in February of 2012. After that, we retained, actually for the development of the ordinance, we retained Funk and Bolton as special counsel to help us through the process. They helped us draft the ordinance. After the ordinance was adopted in 2012, we moved forward with the negotiations of the individual agreements, and then we used the ordinance as a framework to negotiate the agreements. And I'll just touch on pieces to summarize those 3 agreements. As far as terms, with both Armstrong and Atlantic Broadband, we're proposing 10-year terms. The original terms were 15 with all 3. Comcast is a little different because we're going with proposing a 10-year term, and then with a 5-year extension if they make certain improvements within 7 years to upgrade some deficiencies in the Cecilton-Galena area. We've had a lot of complaints in the Town Point area, so we hope to address a lot of those complaints through this, and if they get there within 7 years, we'll extend the term an additional 5 years. Each franchise is non-exclusive. Franchise fee will continue to be 5% of gross revenue paid quarterly. Armstrong and Atlantic Broadband, as far as line extensions, they'll be required to extend at a minimum density of 25 units per mile. Comcast is a little different. Comcast normally operates in more dense urban areas, so they're accustomed to a minimum density of 30 dwelling units per mile and 60 dwelling units per mile with underground planning. Of course, all 3 franchisees will be required to carry commercial general liability and workers' compensation, with the county being indemnified. Also, provisions of Chapter 8, it was 8275 with codification, is now 8381. Is incorporated by reference within all 3 franchise agreements. Now, as I indicated earlier, Comcast will provide basic cable service at no charge to certain county buildings and facilities. And there will be, those specific facilities will be identified in Appendix Exhibit C. Armstrong and Atlantic Broadband will provide basic cable service and internet access at no charge, also to certain county buildings and facilities. Some of those are public education facilities. As far as the public educational government access channel, there is a provision in each agreement for that to be provided. Comcast has agreed to provide a one-time grant of $43,000 payable within 60 days of the county requesting the PEG channel. And also, there's a provision where all three franchise areas would be connected to access that PEG channel.
Can I ask
If it's determined to be technically feasible, I think is the wording. And Scott Messick was involved and helped us out with the process.
the 43,000, what would that go towards Comcast payment?
Scott, you want?
Good morning, council members. $43,000 would go toward any equipment necessary to get a operational channel functional.
Could you tell me how much is actually needed?
I
To
do
get
a lot
it.
more than that.
I think at one time you did some research, prior administration, but those numbers were somewhat inflated, I think, in a certain scenario. So, well, I would be interested at some point. We've had some discussion, during our interviews about the benefit of, having the, video recorded, and, somewhat of the setup that you had looked at with Granicus. So,
My recommendation, as always, would be to do it via webcast instead of a channel. And the reason for that is the tremendous cost affiliation, which was at that point and still is, interconnecting those three service providers. Even though they have agreed to work together, the cost of tying them together is going to be a considerable amount of money.
is there any way to, if we set it up via webcast, that it still would be accessible to the cable channels?
I believe that's feasible. I can't speak for them, but for them to pick it up and broadcast it individually certainly is feasible.
I only ask because I'm not sure if that should be, we should need to go further in our agreement in what they should bring to the table.
Should that come to fruition, that scenario, that would require each of them have a big channel. At that point, following FCC regulations and how many hours of operation we keep, the cost affiliation would be how many hours we keep the station running per day under FCC regulations, and what we fill with that, whether we run it or loop it just continually, or as other jurisdictions throughout the country have done, utilize it for other areas of interest as well. The cost affiliation, though, it would express would be at that point, a studio would be required to fill that content. So just feeding them a raw recording, the only option they would have to do would be to run that in looping, however many hours a day they would have, they would be mandated to run that station.
Okay, I think it's just important that we recognize all of our options and keep them open. There was the channel over in Delaware that we were gonna go check out. It was supposed to be very low cost. I think it's something that we need to check out very quickly, before we sign these agreements.
One thing again that I'll stress here is that getting the fee to them is the high cost of this whole endeavor. While we're sitting in Comcast area in this building, that's not a problem to get the fee to them at this point. getting it over to Armstrong or Atlantic Broadband is not something that the infrastructure does not support that currently. That's where the cost comes in.
Okay, and what, in jurisdictions that are as rural as we are, I think that's probably why we have a different setup or different, challenges. It'd be interesting to see what other jurisdictions, other counties have included in their cable franchises, to accommodate, maybe it's a cable channel or, the studio, or to, if they have more than one cable provider, you know, how did they bring them all together? How did they accommodate? So if you could look into that, I would greatly appreciate it.
Is there any other questions regarding the cable service franchises?
So this is on for a vote on February 5th, or is that for a hearing?
No, it's not a hearing, it is a vote.
Okay.